Hello, good morning and welcome to a special edition of the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, Harry Strain, England's captain. He drew another blank against Croatia on Friday night. He insists, though, he's fully fit after 6 games without a goal for his country. The special one, he gets some surprise backing from Eden Hazard ahead of Mourinho's return to Stamford Bridge on Saturday with Manchester United. And Toon trouble. Is Rafa Benitez's job, is it really on the line after 8 games without a win in the Premier League? As luck would have it, 2 men here to defend the Toon until the day they die. Shaun Custis is head of sport at The Sun. His brother Neil, as if by magic, he's here. He's the Northern football correspondent at The Sun. Nothing like a bit of brother love, I hope, between you two this morning. And here to act as the peacemaker, as if it was needed, Oliver Holt is the chief sports writer at The Mail on Sunday. Morning, guys. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. Neil, what is under your copy of the Sunday Times, please?
They left the green tea bag in the mug, and I wanted to take a sip out of it before we started. Anyway,
so you've hidden it away under the Sunday Times.
I've hidden it away under Jonathan Northcroft's.
OK, let's hope the show gets a bit better from here on in. Don't forget, though, you can tweet the show at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on your screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at the papers then. Bit of a mixed bag this morning, the Mail on Sunday. Harry Kane, then, I don't need to rest. He wants to spearhead England's attack on Monday night against Spain in that Nations League tie. 6 games without a goal for England. But he did remind reporters on Friday night in Croatia that he is the Premier League's 2nd leading goal scorer this season. Sunday Telegraph, I love this. Gareth Southgate, as if, keep the lid on the Jadon Sancho hype. 12 minutes as a substitute against Croatia, but it's all about him. He's at Borussia Dortmund, of course, and they want him to be joined by Manchester City's teen star Phil Foden. That's according to the front page of the Sunday Times. That story in a few other papers this morning. Kane and Abel, we've talked about that. We'll get on to Harry Kane in a few moments' time. But a couple of big stories on the back of the People. Rafa Benitez fears the axe by Mike Ashley. We'll talk about that in part 3 of today's programme. And Aaron Ramsey back on Jose Mourinho's radar. He believes that he's leaving Arsenal on a free transfer at the end of the season. His contract is up, on his way to Manchester United, according to the People. This morning, the Star with that story as well. United in for Ramsey. Easy to see Harry Kane having a dip yesterday in Croatia before England fly on to Spain for that game tomorrow night. A couple of transfer stories in the Express. Gareth Bale blocking that move to Manchester United. We've seen that story a few times. Luke Shaw, though, about to give Manchester United some good news, signing a new contract at Manchester United. Back of the Sun, lay off Jose. This is Eden Hazard's interview yesterday, picked up by the Sun. Back page this morning, Eden Hazard, his regret about Mourinho's dismissal at Chelsea back in 2015. They meet, of course, at Stamford Bridge on Saturday. United go to Plan D. De Gea, he's about to sign a new contract, £375,000 a week, according to Phil Thomas on the back of the Sun this morning. We're getting to all things Manchester United. Mourinho in part 2 in his return to Stamford Bridge. But we're going to start with England first, of course. That game in Croatia on Friday night, Ollie. You were there. You've written about England this morning, where you say the headline in the Mail on Sunday is quietly going the right way. You saw signs from England's performance and the change in formation and some of the younger players that, despite that soulless night in Croatia, that England have got a bright future. What makes you think that, based on the performance in Rijeka?
Well, I thought England played well. I mean, I thought, you know, they kept the ball well again. There's no sign of England reverting to type and abandoning this experiment of trying to play out more from the back, trying to keep possession. Once again, we didn't look like a team that was afraid of the ball, I don't think, which we used to do. And I thought, I mean, Southgate highlighted it in the press conference afterwards, as you know, and again to the Sunday papers, about the growing influence, I think, of Harry Maguire and John Stones at the back, and how he feels they can be the foundation for this team and allow him to experiment a little bit more further up the field with the players that he's bringing in, and the exciting players that are on the fringes at the moment, like Sancho. I thought it was a good performance. Look, Croatia are World Cup finalists. I know they've not had a great time since then. They've had a few retirements, but they're a good side, and I thought we outplayed them. We had the better chances. You know, if Marcus Rashford had finished his 2 chances, good gilt-edged chances, then we would have won the game. And I think to do that away from home, albeit in front of an empty stadium, was a pretty good performance. I thought there was a lot to be positive about.
How did you feel about that as the game unfolded the teams, when they walked out, national anthems played, you could hear everything that was being said in the stand. There was 40, 50 journalists there, perhaps a few dignitaries from the Croatian FA, and of course the contingent from the English FA as well. But how difficult on nights was it? How different was the environment for two top-level teams?
I mean, it was very different, and it's the first time I've ever been to a behind closed doors game. Shaun and I were talking about that before. Shaun's was it Burton Leicester? Yeah,
Leicester.
But I mean, it was very different, and I think there are all sorts of issues about that. I'm still not quite. Well, I mean, I am clear white, but it seemed very unfair to me that for England fans who had bought tickets, why England fans had bought tickets to be there. I mean, to plane tickets, etc. Why England fans should be excluded from the game. It was Croatia who were being punished. It wasn't, it was Croatia who had burned or mowed a swastika into the pitch at a previous game. So I don't see why the England fans who'd made the journey there shouldn't have been allowed in. That's one thing. I mean, from a journalistic point of view, it's fascinating. And I love the idea that, I mean, everybody was waiting for somebody to swear and everything. I mean, if anybody who's played Sunday League football will it was incredibly tame compared to that. I mean, they may well have been on their best behaviour, but the idea that somehow they were turning the air blue couldn't have been...
I think we all heard Jordan Henderson, didn't we?
We did, but I mean, again, that's fairly, that's pretty much what you'd expect.
Yeah, pretty mild. Shaun, you were in the office, I was at the game. We did have several conversations during the course of it. How difficult is it in the office trying to put together a newspaper when the team's drawn 0-0 without a single supporter inside the stadium from either side?
I think it possibly came over on TV as maybe more boring than it was if you were there. I mean, the lack of atmosphere. I know that the radio commentators were saying it's very difficult to commentate on a game where it sounds like you're just in a box room. Yeah. And I think we all found it a bit of a surreal experience. I really we're desperate for something to happen. You get to half-time, we're talking, oh man, it's Friday night, 5 pages. And then it was almost like at half-time, Gareth said, "Come on, we've got to give people something to talk about it." And I think I think there was a definite improvement. I mean, look, as Ollie says, hit the woodwork twice. A couple of missed chances from Rashford. There was things to be positive about, but it's clear that while defensively it's pretty good, up front you can see there are possibilities. That midfield area is something Gareth's still working on hard, and I think he knows that's the bit he's got to crack to take England from there to there. He's talked about it, hasn't he? Where's the Gaza, where's the skulls, if you like. And maybe that person is lurking somewhere around, but I mean, Foden's not getting game time at Man City. Mason Mount, we might hope will get a chance maybe. Maddison, maybe that person. But I think that's probably true. You have to find that person if England are going to make the step up, isn't it?
I don't think you can overemphasise this message about atmosphere and fans and what have you, and how dull a game can look when you see empty seats and empty sections. I mean, a great example, my daughter's the footballer in our family, plays for a couple of clubs, so she loves the game. Zach, my son's not interested in football at least, but loves going to matches. And he loves going to matches because he loves the atmosphere. He loves the banter that goes on, he loves the noise, he loves the fans singing at each other, and he's absolutely fascinated by that. And there's a great quote from Bobby Robson about a dad taking his son into a football ground and how from that moment he's gripped because of the noise, the atmosphere, the emotion that he sees on his father's face, what have you. And it's that really grabs kids, I think. It's the actual atmosphere of a football match, more maybe than the actual playing of the game itself.
Excuse me, I actually wanted to ask you, have you given that ball back to Liverpool? Because last week, for those who didn't see, Neil tweeted a picture because Riyad Mahrez's penalty kick in the final few minutes of that game between Liverpool and Manchester City landed in your back garden.
I know, I got my daughter to throw it over my head while I filmed it, but our 2 dogs came scampering out of the house and chasing after it. No, I got quite a bit of stick from that, as you can imagine. I
thought it was very amusing for you.
There's quite a lot of owners of clubs who will tell you sort of off the record that you don't need fans, actually, because the percentage, money-wise, of what you get from TV and all that, the actual paid-for spectators isn't a big percentage of your revenue. But, of course, what's the point?
What's the
if
game
you do
without
that,
the
what's the
fans?
game without that?
Yeah.
If you've ever watched, I doubt you have, but if you've ever watched any Greek league games,
regular.
and if you're away there, and most of their middle-ranking games, there's like nobody there unless they're the,
When do you watch Greek league games?
when it's been on, when I've been on holiday or something like that.
So you go on holiday and watch a Greek league?
No, it's on in the bar or whatever, but. There's very, very few fans. It's like
being in the company of Wenger, isn't it?
I don't.
Oh, the Greek League Division 2.
Holidays must be crazy.
Yeah, very funny. I don't sit and watch the Greek League, no, but it's been on in the background. And it's soulless, desolate. It must be awful. And there are examples of that all over the world, of games, mid-ranking league games, which are being played out to no spectators. And they're desperate.
This is already... your worst fear's being confirmed. It's like at home with the Custises, isn't it? Neil's back garden, Shaun on holiday.
Silence, Alice. Now, this Serie A is quite a good example because they basically sold the family silver by selling off the rights to all clubs' matches. By basically, you could buy a season ticket to watch every Juventus game. And that's when the crowd started dwindling in Serie A. And the more you started seeing empty spaces, the more people started to fall out of love a bit with football, and more empty spaces came on, so it had an absolute knock-on effect. And it hasn't really recovered in that sense, where it used to... when we used to go to games in Italy, I mean, they were just sensational for the atmospheres, particularly in the San Siro, which is it's not so much anymore.
Yeah,
I think that could be one of the good things out of Friday night. Actually, the realisation that football without fans is, and that we should be making more efforts with ticket prices.
Yeah. Let's go back to the game, because I'd like to ask about... First, let's go to Marcus Rashford and his performance, because he's missed two big chances that he will know he should have taken. Gareth Southgate's in the papers this morning saying, look, we love Marcus Rashford to bits. We're developing him. He's still maturing. He's still learning the game, not only as a club footballer, but as an international footballer. But can you talk to us about his development and where things stand for him at Manchester United, and where he would have been in terms of his preparation going away with England for these games against Croatia and then, of course, Spain on Monday?
I mean, we talk about Rashford's development as if he's, like a Jadon Sancho who's just broken into football. He's played over 100 games for Manchester United, and, over 70 of those have been starts. So this is quite a seasoned professional in that sense, although he is, there is development to come. The problem for Rashford, and I feel sorry for him in a way, I thought he did brilliantly actually to get into the positions to have the opportunity to take the chance. But I think he's overthinking it. I think he's just trying to get it on target. I don't think it's instinctive to him anymore. And I think he feels the weight of the pressure that if he misses a chance, then everyone's going to judge his whole career and his whole future on that one chance, because he doesn't get enough, because at Manchester United he's not played as the central striker enough. So he's almost not used to being in that position anymore. So whereas,
he's only had 2 starts at United, hasn't he, this season?
Yeah, I mean, you get a seasoned striker, you get someone like Harry Kane. Harry Kane will have those chances maybe 4 or 5 times in a game, maybe more against weaker opposition. He may miss 2 or 3, but if he scores 2, then nobody remembers the missed chances. All we're remembering with Rashford at the minute is those missed chances, and I think the pressure is building on him, which is unfortunate. And it's because he's played wide left at United. It goes more to Lukaku. The opportunities don't come along. They're not playing that well either. But there is still a tremendous ability there, and someone who's still very focused on his football, finding it frustrating. But I just think the lack of opportunities... I mean, I'd love to see him played through the middle against Spain tomorrow, with Sancho maybe to his left, supplying him, and see how he gets on then against top... Because he is top quality. He's just going through a period where the chances are few and far between, and when he misses them, and they get highlighted as they are now.
I know you'll be sensitive about this. Mourinho's not really doing him any favours, is he? I mean, what was that guff that he came out with after the Newcastle game about Marcus was sad on the pitch or something? I mean,
yeah. I mean, he was a bit. I think the player himself was a bit bemused by that as well. I mean, Mourinho actually suggested that he shouldn't have started him because he thought the pressure that's building on Mourinho is affecting Marcus Rashford. I don't really think it probably is. So I found that a bit bizarre. I mean, as much as I defend Mourinho, I think that comment about Rashford and McTominay was a bit cruel, to be honest, as it was on Phil Jones' penalty-taking abilities. Yeah. Although he turned out to be spot on. But this is Phil Jones, who's won a title, a Europa League, League Cup. You know, this is so many England caps. I mean, you can't say that about players and not expect criticism to come back to you.
From an England point of view, though, the pressure is on all our youngsters now. We've reached a World Cup semi-final.
More so for Man United, though.
Yeah, but we want them to hit the ground running. We want a Michael Owen, we want a Rooney, we want a Sancho to now, oh, brilliant, he's Borussia Dortmund, he made a good run, maybe he's the future, maybe he can get in the team and dominate, even though I don't think he's started any games, has he, in Germany this season?
He's only started 10 senior games in his career.
But because we got to that World Cup semi-final, I think expectations have gone up, and we want the youngsters to come in, and we don't want to wait 3 or 4 years. We want them to hit the ground running straight away and to be doing it like an Owen did and like a Rooney did. And they were exceptional players, but you've got Mbappe in France, who's playing regularly, lighting up. You know, he's a World Cup winner already. So I think the pressure is understandably on them now, even if it might seem a little bit unfair.
Is there pressure on Harry Kane? He'll be tiring of this question after matches, but it's the 6th game in a row now that he hasn't scored for England. He's had a reasonably good start to the Premier League season with Spurs. But will he be frustrated? Should he have taken that chance? He's cracked one against the crossbar, didn't he, on Friday night against Croatia?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I thought it was a very good header, actually. And so, I mean, as we all know, those are fine margins, aren't they? And he had another one where he was marginally offside that he finished, obviously. But I think he's going to feel the pressure a bit because he keeps getting asked about it. So it's going to play on his mind. That's where all the stories have come from. In today's papers, obviously, after the game in Croatia, he was asked about it in the mix zone. So that's going to play on his mind. But I think there's possibly a feeling that, you know, since he got that, was it an ankle injury he got to, sort of towards the back end of last season, that he's not quite, he was never, as is often the way, I think, with players. It happened to Rooney, I remember, in that season when he was absolutely scoring goals for fun. He got an ankle injury, and then you know, then his season tailed off. He came back early. These players don't rest. You know, they rush back. I think, despite how well Kane played or how many goals he scored at the World Cup, towards the end of that World Cup, as we all know, he did start to look tired then. But he's still scoring. I think it's just. I think part of the problem is, again, coming back to the point Shaun making about expectations. Kane has set such high standards that even though he's still scoring goals, people expect more.
There's the lack of a viable alternative is part of the problem. I mean, where have all the English strikers gone? You know, I'm sure it's a debate you've had many times, but I mean, I was looking at the subs bench to see what they could have done.
They're all number 10s now, aren't they?
Well, I mean,
everybody wants to play in that role in the hole.
And I know we've said it all before, but you look at that era when you had, you know, Cole, Shearer, you had a David Hurst you could call on, you had Collymore. Yeah, Collymore, absolutely. How did Collymore get so few caps? You know, Chris Sutton.
Fowler.
Amazing array of talent. And now we have Harry Kane. They say, well, if we're going to drop oh, hang on, but Marcus Rashford's not playing terribly well at the moment, so where do you go?
Well, Jamie Vardy didn't have to pack in, of course.
Well, no,
which
absolutely
I found
not.
Absolutely bizarre. I mean, he played for England for 3 years, and suddenly he's given it up. This was a lad who wasn't playing professional football properly until he was 23, 24.
No, it's ridiculous.
And suddenly doesn't want to play for England anymore, when I think he would still be getting quite a lot of chances to play and certainly be possibly...
You know, the person I admire, actually, Shaun, is Danny Welbeck.
Absolutely.
Because that guy continues to turn up continues to make himself available. He'll be frustrated at Arsenal that his lack of opportunities there over the past few seasons, and yet he continues to make himself available for the national team without complaint.
And gets loads of stick with people saying, well, what's Welbeck doing in the squad?
As Neil said, there was no options.
There isn't, but I still don't understand Jamie Vardy's why he did that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. He seemed to embrace playing for England, seemed to enjoy it. He's still got loads of pace. He gives an alternative to England to get in behind the defenders, and he's just given it up almost without anybody questioning it. We've just said, oh, OK, fair enough.
Well, that's because he didn't really do a lot for England, did he?
Well, he scored seven goals in 26 or something like that, most of it coming off the bench.
Yeah.
So I still think there was plenty more to get out of him.
It's a very odd.
Dealt with it quite well, didn't he? He's not really retired. He might be available in an emergency.
Yeah.
If we really needed him, he might come.
It might be like Henrik Larsson. Henrik Larsson always used to do that. After a major tournament, he'd always retire, wait for them to qualify for the next one, and then come out to retirement, wouldn't he?
Zlatan.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Didn't have him back.
Yeah.
I honestly don't understand it.
OK, it's been a bit friendly, a bit too polite so far.
Really? I think getting stuck in after 30 seconds.
Well, it was just these Greek holidays. I've never heard you mention them before.
No.
Greek holidays into the 3rd division.
Let's change things. If I can get a word in edgeways.
Carry on.
Let's change things up after the break. Let's talk Mourinho. They're still here. Shaun, Neil and Ollie. Let's see if it's like that at the end of 90 minutes today. We're going to play True or False. We've got Shaun Custis and his brother Neil Custis on. True or False in every part of today's programme. And there's an I don't know if it's an apocryphal story or not, but can you tell us, Neil, whether Sir Alex Ferguson really did utter the phrase at Manchester United press conference, too many Custises?
Oh, it was an absolute classic. It was not just my involvement in it, but I was on the way there, and Shaun was working for the Express at the time. He'd done a back page splash about a transfer target that Fergie was after.
Was it true?
I can't remember.
Shaun?
But anyway,
I can't remember who it was about.
I can't remember who it was about. And on my way in, I was just thinking, there's every chance he's going to mix us up, because he would call me Shaun sometimes anyway and just not bat an eyelid and stuff like that. So as I walked in, it was, you can get out! And I just thought, I'm going to let him go. I'm just going to let him go. That absolute nonsense you wrote this morning. Go on, get out, get out! And I just went, that was Shaun. I'm Neil. He works for a different paper. He's gone, oh, sorry. And then Richard Tanner from the Express goes, oh, that was in my paper. Should I get out? He goes, yeah, you get out! And I think he'd already manhandled Matt Lawton out the door for him saying that he was going to become the next manager of Aberdeen or chairman of Aberdeen or something like that. So he'd already gone. So it was all going off. But then, as I sat down, Fergie was just sort of looking at me, and every sort of couple of minutes during the press conference, he'd turn to me and he'd go, sorry about that, sorry about that. And then when he realised what was going on, he just went, yes, just too many Custises. And he did, he muttered it to himself, and it was... you know, people go on about, you know, Mourinho in press conferences and what have you. I would look... if there'd been a camera recording some of the press conferences we used to have with Sir Alex, in that small room at Carrington, I mean, seriously, I mean, they would go viral. But it was almost it was a better time, though, because he could have a go at you and felt able to do it without there being any comeback. You could have a bit of a go back as well and protect yourself. And it wouldn't suddenly all go out on Twitter. It wouldn't suddenly all... And so the relationship was better. So despite all the battles with Sir Alex, in the end, you still got on with him. You still felt a relationship with him and all that because you could have those moments. Whereas now it's so sanitised, you can't.
If you'd have warned us before the show that you're going to go down memory lane and get all nostalgic, we'd have faded in some music to accompany what you just said. Some misty-eyed background music.
I know. With a sort of picture of him on my shoulder. Yeah. I know. I just think the punters find that sort of thing interesting.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, the early days of Mourinho were like that at Chelsea, actually. They were very banterish, I would say.
At Chelsea at the beginning?
Yeah, right at the start.
Didn't last long because he went missing, didn't he, a few times for weeks. Well, in fact, for weeks on end.
Well, I mean, Sir Alex stopped doing press conferences once for about 6 or 7 months. I mean, I'm talking pre-match press conferences. He wouldn't even do those. Yeah. And he stopped doing post-match press conferences for about the last 10 years, I think, of his reign. But still, when he spoke, it was gold. Yeah.
It's gold with this man as well, whenever he speaks. Neil Custis' headline in the back of the... not Neil Custis, sorry, Eden Hazard. Lay off Jose. You've been wittering about Jose for months, haven't you? About how everyone should lay off him, and it's all unfair, and he's the most successful manager and the biggest trophy-hunting manager in the history of the game and world football. Should we lay off him? What's the current state of play? We talked about it last week. We talked about the story in the Mirror that Mourinho was getting sacked. He then beat Newcastle, the dramatic comeback. He's still in the job. What's the current state of play, Neil?
Well, I mean, I think that comeback still showed what a great manager he is, in the sense that he had the power with the players, but listened to them, and most interesting, listened to Paul Pogba. Said to Pogba, "What would you do?" Effectively, he said, "Drop me deeper, bring Fellaini on." And it worked because Pogba was then on his own and able to dictate the play from a deeper, and it worked, and it turned it round, and it showed that. But what the best bit of it all was that he'd already written about 1,000 words at half-time, slaughtering him, condemning him, saying, this is over, this is the embarrassment, this is all done.
Is this your fantasy?
And then with the final minutes going, he's like, oh, God. So that was the absolute highlight.
To be fair, me and Neil were already discussing a plan of action at half-time.
Yeah, Neil, you're supposed to be a Newcastle fan, I thought. You were going like this to me, weren't you?
Well, no, only because yeah. That was just because I enjoyed doing that to you.
Yeah.
But I did think that showed that there is life still there. That you know, that he's still a great manager, and it was a dramatic afternoon in all aspects. It was quite incredible. Felt bad for Newcastle because they would played so well, particularly in the first half hour, but then stepped off. The bigger test is obviously coming. I mean, because you've got Chelsea and Juventus in the next 2 games, and you know, they're a step up from Newcastle. There are 3 or 4 steps up from Newcastle at the moment. So that is going to be a bigger test. And my fear is that, can one game change it? Well, I mean, what they really needed was a game on the Tuesday, didn't they? And then a game the following Saturday to get the momentum from that going. Are they going to come back and everything's going to be the same? The atmosphere there isn't great. He is trying to turn it round. Some players won't listen, others do buy into it. But there's simmering tensions there that you fear are constantly going to be coming back up. But, you know, the hope is that result will do something for them to propel them on. Don't you think so?
Well, I agree with you that I think it showed there is still life there, and it'd be hard not to admit that. And as you say, it was remarkable. It was a remarkable match, and it was a remarkable turnaround. And I think you would also have to accept that it showed that the players, to a point, were still playing for him. I mean, others would say maybe that they were playing for themselves and for a bit of self-respect, because I think, you know, clearly Neil, I understand, is looking at a glass half full there. If you're going to look glass half empty about that match in particular, the first hour was one of the worst United performances I've ever seen. I mean, they were desperate.
Ever seen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I used to go and watch a lot of United matches when I was a kid, as well as being a reporter. They were desperate.
The first half, I did. Yeah. The first half I thought was actually embarrassing. I thought, my God, this could be 4-5 against Newcastle. There was nearly, you know, there was close to a riot going to go on in that ground, you know, because the fans were absolutely furious. But they were turning the ire towards the board.
Yes,
you know,
they were.
The board is giving a manager 370 million quid, by the way, but anyway.
Which may have had something to do with Gary Neville's intervention the previous evening, I think, and his reaction to the stories about Mourinho's impending fate. But I think Neil's right. It was the reaction is to the board, which I'm sure has given them food for thought as well. It's never particularly comfortable when the fans turn on the board. They're going to be thinking about that. But I'm not sure how much it'll change things. As I say, obviously, partly in my mind is the comeback, because it was impossible not to be struck by that. It was so dramatic. But it hasn't wiped out the memory for me of the first 60 minutes when they were against, as both the guys have said, against a Newcastle team who are an ordinary team, who are a poor team, actually. You know, they made Newcastle look like world beaters. They were drained of everything. They were drained of energy, they were drained of spark, they were drained of invention. They looked like a beaten team. They looked like a team who didn't want to play for their manager. Now, that did then change. But I'm not... I kind of agree with you that it would have been better if they'd had something to build on immediately. I wonder if that will fade away. I don't think that team has got what it takes to launch a recovery.
It's got the players.
It's got the players.
Definitely got the players.
It has,
the talent out there, you know, and the hope is that what Sanchez did, because Sanchez has been moaning and whinging behind the scenes from what I'm told, but the hope is that his intervention with that last-minute goal does something for him. But the one thing that Mourinho did, which I thought looked like a parting shot, was when he took Bailly off with 20 minutes gone and refused to put on Lindelof and instead moved back McTominay. That was as if to say to the board, I told you in the summer these two weren't good enough, despite the fact I spent 62 million quid on them. I told you they weren't good enough. This is the result. I'll leave you to it.
I agree with you, and that's that is one of the things about Mourinho that I distrust, is these games. You know, he turns football matches into personal vendettas, and that's it. I agree with you. That's exactly what I thought he was doing. And then you know, even off the back of an amazing turnaround like that, he managed to pluck these negatives that Neil was talking about the stuff he said about McTominay and you know, and Rashford, which I thought was just strange. There was no need for it. And
again, when he said that, everyone just went, what?
It's just bringing it all back to him. They're sad because I'm getting so much stick from all the horrible journalists. You know, just it's not about that. It was about this fantastic comeback, and it's like this almost this weird desire to pluck a negative from a positive.
I'd been to West Ham Man United the week before as a guest for West Ham, and I thought that was the most abject Man United performance.
Guest of West Ham, did you say?
Yes, I was, yeah.
What? Who's a guest of who in particular?
Karen Brady.
They're trying to pick his brains on Greek third division,
yes,
just to get a few players in.
But it was really... But I thought that was the most inept Man United performance I'd seen in a long time. Then you had the Valencia one, and then you had the half against Newcastle. And I've got to say, Ed Woodward at the West Ham game looked absolutely shell-shocked at half-time. And I looked at it and I thought, I wonder how they're ever going to turn this round. It looked impossible. The interview with Mourinho at the end was being played on the big screen. You had Scholes and Ferdinand talking on all the big screens in this room, and it was just crushing. I mean, it was just so damning of United. And then they produced what they did against Valencia, and then they produced the Newcastle half. And it was almost at half-time, the fans at Old Trafford had a decision to make about whether they turned on him completely or they tried to rally. And Man United came out, and was it the first 2 minutes or minute and a half or something, things started happening. He'd whipped them up a little bit at half-time or to say, I will turn this around. And suddenly thought, yeah, all right, we'll get behind him for this. And as Dan King said in our paper last week, could it be it's the Mark Robins moment? I mean, is that possible, that it is the time where you look back and you go, turned it around, or is it a blip? And I really don't think you could say for certain one way or the other at the moment.
I mean, I think
Neil, Jonathan Northcroft wrote in the Sunday Times last week, it was a fascinating piece about the pursuit of Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. And it became pretty clear that Jurgen Klopp had been lined up before Brendan Rodgers was sacked by Liverpool. They were just waiting for the crunch. That moment, Sir Cape, Rodgers is done, and they said to Klopp, it's an emergency. You have to start immediately. You wanted your sabbatical to continue, but this is an emergency. We need you now. Don't worry about, you don't know the profile of the players, you haven't watched enough English Premier League games, your English isn't good enough yet. You have to start immediately. It showed they'd lined him up before Rodgers was sacked. Could that situation be unfolding at Manchester United, or does Mourinho still have the 100% faith and backing of the board?
Yeah, this is the great Klopp who still hasn't won a trophy but for Liverpool, and doesn't get any pressure, criticism or stick at all, despite what's happened in recent weeks, whereas he gets it all. I'm just making that point as an aside. But
I don't think that's entirely true. But
well, you know, I mean, he's won twice as many trophies with Manchester United as Liverpool won in the last 12 years.
Yeah,
but I don't think the same level of
top of the table.
I don't think the same level of scrutiny is dished out to Jurgen Klopp. But anyway, yes. Well, I mean, you know, I did a story a few weeks ago about Zidane, how Zidane had contacted Mourinho to say to convince him that he wasn't plotting anything behind his back, to say that the agents had just spoken to him about the situation, but Jose did take that as somebody from Manchester United must have been in touch with the agents. That's how he felt, and I think he is getting a little paranoid that there is something going on behind his back. I mean, you could argue that Manchester United wouldn't be doing their job if they weren't sounding out potential new managers when things are going wrong.
Isn't that, and I'm only asking the question, isn't that what they did with, I mean, and that how Mourinho got the job? I mean, he'd been lined up before Van Gaal.
It's how Louis van Gaal got the job at Barcelona from Bobby Robson as well. And then, you know, so it happens with all the managers and with all the football clubs. I don't see that there is a better man out there than him to do this job right now. And I think he's still one of the two best managers in the world.
You do, but what do the board think?
Well, the board want it to work. They want to give him time. They want it to work, but they are senior figures who are losing some faith. You know, you can't deny that. But they desperately want trophies. They're not particularly bought into how they get them, but they desperately want trophies, and they still think this is the man to do it. And to be fair, the man has done it.
I think there's an element of truth in what you're saying and who else is out there. I mean, I think partly because they haven't acted sooner, so Sarri, I think, would have been a good option. I think the person out there who United would want, whether they could get him or not, would be Pochettino. I think you'll say again that he hasn't won any trophies, but I think that his style of play, well, you can't argue that it's not more attractive than United.
Why is it not Zidane? I'm really puzzled by this, that Zidane is a 3-time European Cup winner as a manager, and when his name crops up, people go, "Oh yeah, but he just managed Real Madrid. That was easy. He just sat there and let them play." Well, it's been proved at the moment that that's not actually quite the case. Admittedly, Ronaldo's left, but people go, "Zidane, I don't know whether he's the right fit. Who's out there?" Well, he's sitting on his bum, in effect, waiting for somebody to ring him up and to say, "We really, really want you," not "Would you be interested? We may come back to you," and all of that. How can you dismiss a man like that?
I'm not dismissing him.
Well, then he's out there.
Well, no,
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Well, he's distancing himself slightly from it as well. His camp on say that he's not overly keen on.
Maybe they just want to come back and say, "Oh, here's 20 million or 25 million."
Or whatever. So, Pochettino, Zidane. Why doesn't anybody mention English manager Eddie Howe at Bournemouth?
Why? Because you did a column the other day saying that he should get a top job. Now you want that.
Why he's never linked with the top.
Well, if you were in charge of a club, is that what you do? If you were in charge of Manchester United, you ran Manchester United, would you go, I tell you what, we're going to go and get Eddie Howe. Would you do that, Eddie Howe? Would you go and do that?
Well,
no, would you?
Tottenham,
would you?
Tottenham brought in, I don't see why not. Tottenham brought in Mauricio Pochettino, an overseas manager from Southampton. Yeah. Having done a good job at Southampton, no one would doubt that. Tottenham said, OK, that's our next manager. Why wouldn't Manchester United identify Eddie Howe as their next?
Maybe because of what happened with David Moyes.
Or maybe because it didn't work out at Burnley.
Because, and this is, unpalatable to Tottenham fans, but because Tottenham isn't as big a club as Manchester United either. So it's getting there, but it isn't as big a club as Manchester United, and Tottenham will be a stepping stone.
And you saw what Manchester United did to David Moyes, the pressure on him. He looks half the age he did towards the end at Manchester United. Now, I still believe he was sacked too early, but you saw what it did to him. You need a manager who is used to managing a seriously big club to come in and take over Manchester United, because I swear the scale of it, the scrutiny, everything is bigger than, I believe, any other club in the world. And people like Van Gaal struggled with it. Mourinho is struggling with it. Mourinho, in his very first pre-season, was overwhelmed by everything that had to be done at Manchester United, apart from just sort of doing stuff with the players. So you need someone who's used to that, and Eddie Howe's not used to that.
OK, one day, Eddie, Manchester United might be yours, but not according to Neil, not just yet. It's a big job, though. Will it become available? Rafa Benitez at Newcastle. He fears the axe from Mike Ashley. We'll talk more about that. It's coming next here on the Sunday Supplement. Welcome back. With us this morning, Shaun Custis, Oliver Holt and Neil Custis. It's all going rather swimmingly so far.
Absolutely.
It's going swimmingly for England's players as well. They're all at sea. They were all in the sea yesterday after England's draw with Croatia on Friday night. They're on their way to Spain today for the Nations League tie. Harry Kane, though, he says he doesn't need to rest. England's captain hasn't scored for his country for 6 games. He's scoring, though, for Tottenham. Back page of the Sunday Express. Similar story about Harry Kane. A couple of other stories, though. Gareth Bale saying he won't go to Manchester United from Real Madrid. Luke Shaw about to agree a new deal at Manchester United. Some good news for them, finally. A headline that Neil could easily have written on the back of the Sun this morning. Lay off Jose. It's actually Eden Hazard talking about his former manager. Mourinho, of course, sacked by Chelsea in 2015. He goes back to Stamford Bridge on Saturday with Manchester United. United about to announce the signing, or the new contract for David De Gea, £375,000 a week, according to the Sun this morning. Sunday Telegraph, Gareth Southgate, keep a lid on the hype around Jadon Sancho. 12 minutes as a substitute for England on Friday night against Croatia. Good luck with that. The Sunday Times. European giants, they're all targeting Manchester City's team star Phil Foden. This is Borussia Dortmund. Of course, they've already got Sancho. They want Phil Foden as well. Back of the Sunday People, this is where we're going to go to now. Harry Kane unable. He's happy with the way he's playing. But is Mike Ashley happy with the way Newcastle are playing? I doubt it. They haven't won this season in the Premier League. They need to get some points. They're getting pretty desperate, Shaun. Story here, though, that Benitez fears that Ashley is going to sack him because of all the stick, because he's worried about a revolt among supporters at St James's Park. Tell us the situation with Benitez and his future and his standing. We know he's standing with Newcastle United supporters, that's not in doubt, but is it in jeopardy with Mike Ashton?
I don't know whether he fears it in the sense that, I mean, financially he'll get a big payoff and his reputation is undamaged, I think, by what's gone on in Newcastle. He won't go out there with people thinking he's a busted flush, not by any means. But is the fact that, you know, Ashley's suddenly been turning up to games, making himself quite visible, which is unusual. Had a meeting with the players, and I think he certainly doesn't want to go down again, Ashley. There's no doubt about that. He still wants to sell the club, but he's trying to sell it for an unrealistic figure. And you look around, it's a bit like Ollie's point, who would come in and do a better job? The one thing I would say is that does concern supporters, and there is a bit of chatter about this recently, is that Rafa basically tries to get 1-0 up, or in last week's case 2-0 up, and nearly 3-0. We probably did all that far too early, and then try and save what you've got. Partly because the personnel isn't there to probably stay on the front foot all the time. But there is a little feeling that we try to get a point or try to preserve a 1-0 win, and that's perceived as a little bit negative. But, I mean, still all the fans are on Rafa's side. They still want him to stay. It's the most trophy-winning manager we've had in a long time, and we don't win any trophies, so it's great to have somebody there who actually does. And we know that just with a little bit of investment, with him in charge and 52,000 crowds there could be a possibility of doing something. But Mike Ashley doesn't want to push it any further than where he is at the moment. He doesn't want to hugely invest. He thinks it's a money drain for him. He wants to use it to promote Sports Direct. And we're stuck in this limbo.
Well, it does anything but promote Sports Direct, does it? I mean, it does exactly the opposite. I mean,
well, you say that, but all the advertising around the ground goes around the world, and I understand what you're saying, but if he thought it was damaging that business seriously, then he'd probably sell the club for a little bit cheaper.
What are your thoughts on Mike Ashley? We know about Rafa Benitez. The last time you were on, it was a kind of 5-minute love-in, you and Rafa. But what about Mike Ashley?
Well, I mean, he's toxic for the football club, and he has been for a long time. And the people who come out and back him or come out in support of him, high-profile figures in the media, have absolutely no idea about that football club. You haven't, have you? Sorry, have you? Sorry if you have.
Well, once or twice. Once or twice?
No, I didn't.
Once or twice.
You were probably more
Context.
fair. You were probably more fair than others. But they don't, because they keep going on about, oh, these fans, they have unrealistic expectations. Yeah. When your last trophy was the Texaco Cup in 1975, believe me, you don't have unrealistic expectations. You just want hope. And that hope is...
count the Texaco Cup, I've got to say.
Well, I don't know.
There's the Anglo-Italian in 73 as well.
It's there on Wikipedia, so...
Yeah. Japan Cup, 82.
They just want a bit of hope, and he's drained the club of that hope. And that's what's the most disappointing
when
thing.
you say you've got to, people don't understand the club, what do you mean? Like, well, because we've been to every ground in this country pretty much, certainly at the top level, or you think of Leeds United in the Championship, all those clubs. At some point in our career, we've been to those clubs. You've been all over Europe watching Manchester United. You've travelled all over the world watching football. What is the difference between Newcastle United and the emotional attachment that someone else and the bond that someone else would have with their football club?
I'm not saying it's different. I'm just saying that when the biggest thing that irritates the fans and the 52,000 who go, and believe me, there are other things to do in Newcastle at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, despite what that buffoon said. But the thing they don't get is that the fans want someone... It's such a big part of the city. It's such a big part of the community.
It's a cathedral on the hill.
And the fans just want that. Yeah. They want someone in charge of the club, as Sir John Hall was, who was passionate about the club and was willing to back managers and give them some hope that, you know, a trophy might be on the horizon, something might happen. And they haven't got that with Mike Ashley. I don't say that it's different. I'm not saying that's any different to Aston Villa fans. I'm sure it's not. But I'm just saying the criticism of Newcastle fans seems to be that their expectations are unrealistic, and they're not. They're not unrealistic.
Sorry, Neil, could you just clarify? When you said that there are other things to do in Newcastle on a Saturday afternoon other than going to watch Newcastle United at 3 o'clock, what are you actually referring to there? Because people at home probably won't or may not realise or understand what you're talking about.
Well,
I think I've got a fair idea.
A middle-aged guy who calls himself the Moose on Talk Sport said that there was nothing else to do in Newcastle on a Saturday afternoon, and that's why the fans just go to watch a football match.
How to alienate the Geordie nation?
Absolutely right.
It's the only thing you want to do on a Saturday.
I'm not talking about that in particular, but some of the stuff that's talked about Newcastle and actually about northern cities in particular is patronising beyond belief.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they're talking about it like it's a different planet. It's like when you say what else is there to do in Newcastle, what else is there to do in any city? Why do you think Newcastle? I don't mean you personally. Why do people think Newcastle's different to anywhere else? I mean, there's same things as there are to do in any other city.
Well, it was just that. I mean, it was just the one guy who said it. It just caused a bit of a storm.
Part of the difference is that it's a one-club city with a stadium right in the middle of the town. That you walk through, you're on the bus, you get the train, you see it. It dominates the entire city. Manchester's got 2, Liverpool's got 2 clubs. Newcastle has 1. It's the entire focus of people's week. It still is. It's very old school, but it's the focus of the week. The ideal, actually, that this perhaps is unrealistic, is to have a local person made good who's worth billions, who stood on the terraces like... I mean, it's nearly like a John Hall. He wasn't a huge football fan when he was growing up, but it's sort of like that, who takes it over and says, right, here's a load of money, I get you all, we've got to win a trophy, even if it's the League Cup. I've still got a bit of a problem about that. People don't understand that. I'd rather win a League Cup and get relegated, frankly, than not win something. That understands that supporters just want to see some way of building success. And somebody like Mike Ashley, who comes in from the outside, really, really doesn't get it, treats it as a bit of a plaything, and treats the supporters with contempt.
But it doesn't have to be local, It doesn't have to be somebody local. I know that's the dream. I know that's
that was a ridiculous idea.
That's every club's dream, but it has to be somebody benevolent who wants to buy into it. Like at City, for instance. Look, and I know there are lots of question marks about the regime in Abu Dhabi. I totally get that. But if you look at what they've done around City, around the area, then...
Brilliant. But some of those fans will tell you that they, ridiculously maybe, preferred it when they were a proper local club, because they pride themselves on being the local club of Manchester, don't they?
But that's a slight... In a way, that's a different matter. I mean, I still wish City were at Main Road, because I love Main Road, but progress is progress, and you can't turn the clock back.
But on a different scale, look what's happened to your team, Stockport.
Yeah.
The way that's been pulled apart and all of that. You feel exactly the same about Stockport County the way we feel about Newcastle United.
I do, what I can see is that what I see as an outsider when I look at Newcastle is a waste of potential, a potential of a fantastic club, which, as you say, I mean, I was up there for the Great North Run a few weeks ago. I got the tram back into town, and it's exactly what you say. First thing you see is this cathedral. It's the city's cathedral, isn't it? On top of the hill, it's the thing that dominates the city, and to me, Newcastle. If I had 2 clubs that I would say are a waste, and Leeds at least, it'd be Newcastle and Leeds are at least appear to be getting back to what they once were, and Leeds and Newcastle should be top 6 in my opinion. They are great English clubs, and both of them should be. And what I see going on at Newcastle, I agree with what Neil said. It's toxic, and it's a shame.
I got abused by some of your Stockport fans at the train station.
Did you? Well, there were probably good reasons for that.
I think you sent them. They shouted across at me on platform 2, something about Jose and something else I can't say.
We're going to carry on a Newcastle theme in the next part, because we'll talk about Paul Gascoigne in your column this morning in the Mail on Sunday. But we need to finish off the true or false as well with this part. It's your... rumour has it that the Custis family used to sit down on Christmas Day with Neil and Shaun and watch Sunday Supplement repeats in the afternoon before the turkey was served. True or false?
False. I think the last time we sat down together on Christmas Day was probably before the Sunday Supplement started.
I think we were playing Skelectrics the last time we did that.
So that'd be false.
Yeah, that'd be false.
Mum and Dad watching?
Then we've got Sky.
No, I don't think so.
Should have got it piped in. OK, next up, we're going to talk Paul Gascoigne and Ollie's column this morning in the Mail on Sunday. That's coming next. Welcome back. Right, let's get on. True or false, Neil?
Oh, what?
Have the Custis brothers ever been on this programme before?
I thought
Together?
I thought we had one.
We had as well.
While ago, but I thought we had.
Brian Wilno presented it.
Yeah,
It may have been.
it was definitely
I thought we'd done it before.
It was before my watch. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
OK, let's move on to Ollie's column.
Everybody appears to have forgotten.
I think we have.
Instantly forgettable. I hope this show wasn't instantly forgettable. Ollie,
I remember when he came on with an Alice band on, however, that is unforgettable.
Nobody's
Absolutely
forgotten.
No one
Never
will
let him
forget
forget
that. No, I know. Anyway, carry on.
Thank you.
It was just after he'd gone to see Beckham at his Spanish Villa,
No,
wasn't
it
it?
wasn't.
So he'd been slaughtering Beckham.
That's another one of your fantasies.
He'd been slaughtering Beckham for about 7 years, and then suddenly he gets a call saying, David would like to speak to you. And overnight, Beckham was the best things. It's like, great, wonderful David, there's things he does and all that sort of thing. Great family. And then he put an Alice band on when he appeared, in tribute to him. Unbelievable.
Not quite true, but anyway, whatever.
So wrong.
No,
That's the only thing to stop short of.
Yeah.
OK, let's move on to Ollie's column this morning. It's about Paul Gascoigne. Talk us through it, because this is about the Scottish Hall of Fame and the decision to withdraw the honour that was going to be bestowed on Gascoigne this week. Ollie, you've decided to write about it. You say Gascoigne's cruel treatment shows how far that our game has still got to go in terms of respect and dignity.
Yeah, I mean, the background to the story, I think, is that the Scottish Football Hall of Fame, a panel, there was some element of a public vote and then a panel decision to induct Paul Gascoigne into the Scottish Football Hall of Fame. There were rumours, I think, began to circulate last week that the people at the Scottish Football Association were going to boycott the dinner, which is at Hampden Park next weekend. And then the next day, the Scottish Football Hall of Fame, which I have to say is not an organisation I'd heard of before, but announced that they were withdrawing the invitation indefinitely to Gascoigne. I think a lot of people are embarrassed. A lot of people are embarrassed about it. Lots of people in Scotland are embarrassed about it. And there was one of the sort of juxtaposition that I mentioned there was that it was World Mental Health Day last week, and a lot of people know that Gascoigne. Everybody knows that Gascoigne is not being well, is still struggling with various issues and problems, and we make a big deal, quite rightly, about mental health now, and I just think that it showed the treatment that he had. He's clearly struggling, showed a lack of sensitivity and a lack of class, and I think that as a game, football never quite knows how to deal with Gaza. We sort of, in my opinion, he's the best player we've had since '66 or since '70, best English player, and yet we never quite know whether to be proud of him or to be embarrassed by him. And I think I'm certainly not of the opinion that football's turned its back on him, because I think a lot of people have tried to help him over the years, a lot of people. But I do think that football is probably still the only thing that he thinks of as refuge, I imagine, and for something like this to happen, which I gather was something that he was proud of and that he was looking forward to, I just think is a shame and shows a lack of class.
Do people look at Gascoigne at times and think, this guy, too much aggravation?
Too much, sorry?
Aggravation.
I understand why people think that sometimes, but actually, when you meet Gaza, when you see him in a football environment, when you see him enjoying sitting with football people, he's in the element.
As he was when do you remember when he saw Southgate before the Switzerland
Indeed.
game last month at the King Power?
Gareth Southgate, it was a huge thrill for him when Gareth Southgate says, we've never had a Gaza. He was really pleased about it because we went to him afterwards and said, will you do a piece with us about what Gareth Southgate said? And he said yes, and how touched he was by Gareth remembering it, not just remembering him, but basically anointing him as the best midfield player he'd ever played. That creative spark, which I was talking about earlier. And in football terms, I mean, obviously as Newcastle fans, he's right up there. I've
been coming across Gaza since he was 17, when he used to come into Newcastle Evening Chronicle offices, bounce around the...
Who was first?
Me.
Who met Gaston
bounce around
first?
the building, so his first goal against Oxford United for Newcastle. And he is... Look, he's had his ups and downs with the Geordie nation at times as well. I mean, going down to Spurs and all of that wasn't... We weren't delighted about it, but he's rightly revered as a great player. I think the hardest thing about this particularly is, well, if you're not going to induct him in the Hall of Fame, don't say you're going to induct him into the Hall of Fame, then take it away. That is going to hit him really, really hard. At a time when actually he was on a bit of a high, having been praised and he has always been put back into the public consciousness, isn't he?
Yeah.
It goes quiet a bit on Gazza for a while, and then he comes back again because we are craving... I mean, his talent, all of us who grew up watching him, there's nothing to compare. I haven't seen a player as great as him live.
I think
in England, an English footballer.
I think there's a huge desire. Obviously, there's been moments in his past that dark moments where he was truly wrong. We know about that, and that's come up again now because of this. But I think there's a huge desire in the country from the majority of people to want him to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think everyone wants Gazza to be okay because they just love the character they saw. They don't always see the demons and what happened behind the scenes, but they love the character that they saw, and they see someone suffering and they see someone struggling. And I think this was actually cruel. I mean, really, really cruel, because as Shaun said, I mean, I read that column last night. I was struggling to get to sleep, so I read that column last night, and every word in it was absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. It was cruel what they did, and for somebody who loves football so much, and as Shaun said there, still enjoys... I mean, when he went into the tunnel to meet Gareth Southgate, nobody then was going on about, oh, but what about this, what about that?
No,
everyone thought... And I thought, when I first heard they were going to do it, I just thought, isn't that absolutely fantastic? Absolutely fantastic. And when they pulled out, I just thought, you spineless, soulless, you know, it's just pathetic.
I think, we were both at... When Madrid played Spurs, I think Gazza was a guest in Madrid, and Gazza was in the hotel we were in, and in the lounge, he was sat there after the game. And, I mean, big figures in football, Madrid, Spurs, were just coming around to sit with him and be with him. And he was... And he loves that.
Had to say that.
He loves still being part of the scene. He still wants to be part of the scene in any capacity he can be. I think it frustrates him slightly that he can't be. I mean, you can't argue with the fact, I suppose, that he's probably not the most reliable person, if you like, to give him certain jobs.
But what about when he went back
but
to Rome? When he went back to Lazio a couple of years ago and went around the pitch, absolutely revered still there as a hero. And he didn't actually play as many games as he could have done for them, but they absolutely revered.
Not least for the... He got some big goals from, didn't he?
Header against Roma.
Yeah, he did. I want to talk about another player who is revered, who's just got his first job as a manager, which is Thierry Henry, named as the Monaco manager yesterday. His press conference to unveil him or announce his arrival is next week. Is this the right move for him? Is this the right time for him, Ollie, to take this job?
I think it is the right move for him. I mean, obviously, he's going back to where it began for him at Monaco. They've had a bad start to the season, but I think and clearly they've sold an awful lot of players. They're a selling club who have sold off their best players, but I still think there is potential there, and in many ways I would like to have seen him at Villa because it's our league and it would have been good. It would have been good for the Championship, but I think it probably is the right decision for him. I think there's obviously a sentimental pull there, and I think there's more scope for him to improve the team there.
Do you think also less pressure in some ways going to Monaco? Not a hugely big supporter club. Yes, it's a big-ish name in European football, but probably the sort of place where he's going to get a bit of leeway, especially after the bad start they've had.
Absolutely.
I think it probably suits him a
I think Shaun's absolutely right. It's a good fit. He's got a bit of time because they've made this bad start. Anything that he does to improve it is going to play well.
And Dean Smith and John Terry, is that the dream team at Aston Villa? Of course, we thought that Thierry Henry was about to get the Villa job last week, but Dean Smith has been parachuted in, and he'll work alongside John Terry, or John Terry will work alongside Dean Smith at Aston Villa. Is that a good appointment? Are they good appointments?
I think it is. I think it is, and I think the Terry thing is possibly being looked at with more scrutiny than the actual appointment of the manager. But John Terry got an awful lot out of a number of Aston Villa players by playing with them last season, just in terms of on the pitch, just directing them, helping them, using his experience. And I think even Grealish became a better player with John Terry around him. And John Terry has a, you know, he's a divisive character, but he has what he does behind the scenes with players and how he's admired and what have you can't be underestimated. And he has made players better by playing with them. And I think I think that's a great addition for Villa. And it's, you know, this having back to having one of our own, but you know, Villa have got a Villa fan. You know, someone who can still name the 14 players who were there when they won the title in '81. Stood at the Holt end, and you know, there is something about that still. There's still that romanticism in football where he will probably get more of a honeymoon period than somebody who managed Birmingham, for example, like Alex Cleach. So, and it's good that someone who's done it in the lower league is being recognised for a big job, and Aston Villa is a very, very big job.
Like there's another bit like sort of an Eddie Howe kind of figure, someone who's come through the lower league.
I'll apologise to Neil, but I've seen a couple of Brentford games on TV this season. I know you don't like
was this in
unfashionable.
Was this during a gap in the Greek league?
They played some fantastic football. I mean, anybody who's seen them play this season, they're a fantastic football team. And Dean Smith got, I mean, players who have gone under the radar playing. You know, really, really well, and I think that can't have gone unnoticed. I don't know whether it means a huge change of style for Aston Villa, and maybe it'll take a little bit of time. But alongside Terry, who's, let's face it, a passionate man and a good influence in the dressing room, I think it looks a great combination. I really do.
I went to see Leeds recently, and
it was Leeds Brentford game.
No, it was Preston. They played Preston, but. And I was absolutely blown away by the style in which Leeds played under Bielsa. And a lot of people said to me, yeah, but have you seen Brentford? And because, you know, they're doing it too. So, I mean, I think it is a terrific appointment for Villa. I don't, like Neil, I kind of don't quite get the unease about Terry. There seems to be this unease that maybe... I think he is, from all I understand, a very generous teammate who helps, you know, who can influence others and does improve others, and I think he will have even more scope to do that at Villa, so I don't see the problem.
Yeah, OK. Some good news for Villa fans, and a sad week, of course, because their chairman and former owner, Doug Ellis, of course, passed away last week. OK, next up, we're going to talk about Eden Hazard, lay off Jose Mourinho. He says he has regrets about Mourinho's dismissal back in 2015. More on that coming next. Fill in the blanks. Shaun Custis has been described on Twitter as the ultimate football...
Man.
Best day blank. What is it?
Best day blank. Hipster.
Oh. Hipster?
Goodness me.
Oh my
That's not what we were expecting, was it, Ollie?
For watching the Greek league.
I could name about 20 that would fill that role before him.
For my Greek league knowledge.
Oh, well, that could be it. That could be it, yeah.
OK, let's talk Eden Hazard's lay off Jose Mourinho.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely right. Why? He talks about 2015. He says Mourinho. He said, if you ask me if I want the trainer I want to work with again, it would be Mourinho. Hazard clearly has some regrets about the way that he was player of the season Chelsea won the title under Mourinho. Came back, he said, I was out of shape, and he didn't meet Mourinho's huge expectations.
Well, he was sort of suggesting that Mourinho gave them an extended holiday, and that's
he
why
did.
He came
that's
back,
right. Yeah.
He
wasn't alone. Yeah.
I mean, you know, brilliant player right now, obviously, brilliant player all round, but he's down tools twice now, which has cost managers jobs, and that one under Mourinho was particularly poor, although there was an awful lot of other things going on. But it's interesting how this is playing out, because, you know, he's saying, I'd like to play under Jose again. There's going to be a vacancy at Real Madrid probably very soon. If Manchester United don't pick up, there could be a vacancy at Manchester United. And
can see a story coming on here.
Well,
Neil.
the president of Real Madrid and Mourinho are still very close. You know, there was no animosity between them two when he left. He'd actually wanted him to stay. It was Mourinho who chose to go. So you could see that all playing out with Mourinho going back to Madrid and then Hazard joining him.
You can see Mourinho back at Madrid.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll be getting a nice little trip out to the Bernabeu, Neil, if that happens.
Go to Bex's Villa,
that's all expenses, isn't it?
That whole team, I mean, down tools, if you like. I cannot understand Hazard saying that in many ways, because it was so obvious what they did. And in fact, one of the criticisms of Hazard, who I think is absolutely fantastic player, is that the reason he's not up there, or seen up there as Ronaldo and a Messi, is that he doesn't do it every season. And for some reason, he's had 2 seasons where he's almost just switched off, and he needs to get that consistency. But as Neil says, is he laying the ground for something else? A bit bizarre, really, isn't it?
One of the things he does say in that piece that he did, Hazard, is that Chelsea had become stuck in a cycle of negativity, he says, doesn't he? And I mean, I think there are comparisons there with what's happening at United. I mean, he says he'd love to play with them again, but he also says that, you know, it effectively says that things had reached the point of no return at Chelsea in terms of this cycle of negativity, and you wonder if there's a comparison there. Obviously, Neil would hate to think that, but...
Well, trophies on the table, anyway.
Where is...
yeah, Community Shield.
He always counts the Community Shield.
Yeah, he does.
Europa League, League Cup.
3
3 trophies, yeah.
Pochettino.
Yeah.
Spurs, actually. How many Spurs?
Yeah,
Right.
well,
yeah.
not had as much money, has he?
Well,
the last manager to win a trophy at Tottenham?
He's playing better football.
Ramos,
George
wasn't it?
George Grant.
George Grant.
Yeah,
It was Juan Ramos, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
League
Yeah,
Cup
of course,
final
Ramos.
against, yeah. For Eden Hazard, where does it... Shaun just mentioned Messi, Ronaldo. Where is this guy? We were treated to the Messi Super Show a couple of weeks ago in the Champions League, of course.
I think he's up there with Jadon Sancho. Don't, not the hype. No, I think he's up there with them because he's not.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
the way
now
he's playing.
right now is my favourite player to watch.
The way he's playing at the moment.
In English football.
Yeah, probably, yes. Playing in English football, he's a favourite player to go and watch right now. But he knows that to be considered one of the all-time great players, he can't have seasons where he just switches off. Ronaldo hasn't had one, Messi hasn't had one.
He's the best player in the best league. Because I think the Premier League's the best league.
Where's Kennedy in all this?
He'll get his chance once Hazard leaves.
Yeah.
I think he's potentially the best player in our league. I mean, I think you'd have to look at, you know, he needs to do what David Silva's been doing, or last season Kevin De Bruyne and Salah. I mean, I think he absolutely has the talent to be the best player in our league, and I think I love watching him play too. But like the other guys are saying, he has to do it again and again, as Messi and Ronaldo have done.
I think we often
to be considered with them.
I think we often forget about players who just do it year in, year out.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that time when Ginola got Player of the Year for a goal against Barnsley or something like that. You know, we forget about players who are doing it all the time. And David Silva's a classic example. Yeah. I mean, week in, week out, Sergio Aguero, week in, week out. Yeah. Don't cause any problems, just do it. And those two are the 2 best players Manchester City have ever had. But I think Silva in particular doesn't get the recognition because we're just used to him doing it.
Silva City's best player in their history? Think of Mike Summerby.
No, Aguero's best player in their history.
Aguero's best player in their history?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's the best foreign player ever to play in England as well, Aguero, for the impact he's had on...
Thierry Henry.
No. For the impact he's had on that
Aguero,
football
Henry,
club at the right time.
One word on the best you've seen.
What?
In the Premier League?
Foreign player.
Henry, I suppose.
Yeah. A lot of votes for Henry. Zola's my personal favourite, anyway. OK, we have run out of time this morning. Thanks very much to Shaun, to Ollie and for Neil for keeping the equilibrium as well. Lots of football is coming your way. It's all on Sky. First up, Scotland against Portugal. That's from 4:30. Poland against Italy from 7:40. That's all today. Spain against England tomorrow from 7. Bosnia and Herzegovina against Northern Ireland. That's from 7:30. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week, same time, 9:30. See you then. Bye-bye.